Hour 3 of Overdrive, TSN 1050, now on TSN 2. Mark Rowe in for Brian Hayes alongside Dave Feschuk and Frankie Corrado. And following our conversation about what you're doing as a 14-year-old, Frankie, and you mentioned that you'd been cut from your rep hockey team for the second or third time. There's a lot of people pouring in saying, well, if Frankie's like the ultimate underdog story, like look at the adversity that he had to go through to become not just an NHL player, but now this great broadcaster as well.
Wow, I didn't know people were saying that. It's you know what, I think you know what it is? It's a good story for young kids who play AAA hockey or AA hockey and it doesn't work for a team. And all it is, it's like there's a lot of NHL players that weren't always the best players growing up. Like there's a lot of guys that had to work for it for one reason or another. Maybe you didn't have an interest in the sport as much, or you didn't grow at the same time as the other guys. It's just, I don't know. It's there. Everyone gets to where they need to go. It is a little bit of a marathon.
Yeah, and a lot of guys that are the phenoms when they're 13, 14, 15, Frankie, as you know, and as you could tell us right now, I'm sure you can name off a bunch of guys who were better than you at 14. They don't turn into the NHL stars, right? And it's a funny thing, and a lot of it is, in my view, and I'm interested to hear yours too, Frankie, is it's just work ethic, right? Just the ability, and also love of the game, like just the love to keep at it, and the love to kind of take those disappointments and build off them, rather than having those disappointments kind of crush you.
That was always one of the funniest lines that you hear. It's like, yeah, my kid was just as good as his kid. His kid just worked harder. Well, that's part of it. Like working hard is a skill. Like that's part of it. That's what is the separating skill, is how hard you work. So, and you're right. Like there's kids at age 9 and 10 that are going to the NHL for sure. And then by 12 and 13, maybe they didn't grow, or maybe they don't like the sport. Maybe the parents push them a little too much and things fizzle out. And, I think the best story, like I think I've said this to you guys before, just to put things into perspective, is we're sitting one time at Lakeshore Lions Arena and we have a game to play. I think this would have been like my under 16 year. And there's just some beer league guys on the ice before us. And I can't remember if it was one of the coaches on our team or one of the parents on our team was walking by and just said to us, just remember, guys, all roads eventually lead to here. No matter where you play, no matter where you go, this is where you're all headed. This is where we're all headed. Yeah. So just, take it all in stride, enjoy it, because at some point this is where you're going.
Well, as we switch sports, it won't be too long until Aaron Rodgers is playing in the equivalent of a beer league football game, because he's near the end of his career. And now he's trying to battle back from an Achilles injury. Dianna Russini is going to join us in a couple of moments, and we'll get her thoughts on that and throughout NFL training camps as they begin. But where does that story for you, Dave, rank in kind of your interest level of going into this NFL season, and what Aaron Rodgers, with so much hype going into last year and we got nothing from him, what he can do for a Jets organization that just hasn't been able to find any success recently?
Well, it's one of the most interesting storylines of the NFL season, because on one hand, you're hearing some pretty informed people, like people close to the league, telling us that this is a Super Bowl contender, that the Jets are for real, that the Jets have to be taken seriously this season. And yet, having watched this league for an awfully long time, there's another part of me that keeps saying to myself, they're still the Jets. Mm-hmm. They'll find a way to screw this up. And then to your point, Aaron Rodgers, I mean, where is the idea, Frankie, that this guy, after coming off an Achilles surgery, is going to become a Super Bowl-worthy quarterback, given that the last time we saw him actually play healthy with the Green Bay Packers, he wasn't even that good.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's welcome in our guest, because I'm sure she's got a lot of thoughts on this topic. She is the senior NFL insider for The Athletic. She's also the host of a new NFL podcast called Scoop City. Dianna Russini, who's been covering the league for years. And Dianna, surprise, surprise, we got talking about Aaron Rodgers before you joined us here. And I'm sure that's got to be at the top of the list of intriguing stories that you'll be covering throughout training camp.
Oh my goodness, it's definitely one of the top 3 stories that I'm watching closely. Just knowing and being at that game where it all ended for the New York Jets in just 3 plays, watching him go down, running in the tunnel to see how serious of an injury it was. And I watched him right there on the golf cart go by, and he said nothing. And that was just, we've all been doing this a long time. You just know. And I'm like, this ain't good. And of course, it turned out to be what it was. And the entire season just swirled the drain as they tried to figure out what they wanted to be in a world without Aaron Rodgers. And guess what? We saw what the answer is. They had no idea, and they had no answers, and they essentially gave up. So now here they are. They've turned the page. Aaron appears to be healthy. He's saying he's healthy. He was out in Tahoe just recently playing a golf tournament. I got tons of friends that were out there, and they said he's great. He was in good spirits, ready to go, the whole thing. So I think in terms of running it back, this year the New York Jets are going to pick up where they left off at camp last year. Because, guys, I was on the sideline at Florham Park watching these practices. And I was, at the time, I was on SportsCenter on ESPN, and I was their reporter from all the afternoon reports for the Jets. And I was trying my best to contain my excitement watching Aaron, because I was even surprised at the time, knowing how old he is and seeing that he lost a little bit of that ability in Green Bay towards the end. Oh, no. In New York, he was lighting it up in practice. And I know it's just practice, but still, it was incredible to see. And I haven't seen someone in a New York Jets practice jersey in so long look that good. So to go from that to where we are now, where they didn't make a lot of changes, they did, get a couple guys on O-line. They obviously upgraded a little bit at offense. It all lies in the health. If he's healthy, they're going to win.
It's all kind of coming back to me now. Last year when the chatter starts to pick up that, hey, the season might not actually be over for Aaron Rodgers. Like, he is really expediting things. And then there he is, the Jets are playing a game and he's got to be front and center before the game, during warmups, bouncing around, throwing the ball around. Like, the Aaron Rodgers, package comes with a little bit of something extra. You can call it shtick, you can call it the Rodgers show, whatever you want to call it. How does that kind of factor into his recovery and coming back this season?
Look, I think the New York Jets are really comfortable with what they signed up for in regards to how Aaron Rodgers is going to handle himself. They don't care. Woody Johnson, the owner, does not care if he does 75 interviews a day on your network, and I'll do everything I can to have him hop on during the week if I can, if I see him. But they literally have no rules for Aaron Rodgers, and they're comfortable with that. And I give them credit, and I always have, for giving him the keys to an organization that knows nothing about winning. And he at least understands it. He understands culture and what it takes and the work that goes into it. But with him comes this sideshow of Aaron, and the cameras have to be on him, and he likes attention, and he likes us doing what we're doing right now, which is spending the first time I'm joining the show here talking about him. But the thing is, if he wins, it doesn't matter. It's that simple. And that's how the organization sees it. They could have made changes. They explored making changes this offseason. They talked to Arthur Smith, the current offensive coordinator and for the Pittsburgh Steelers and the former head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. They were exploring ways to improve on offense, knowing Nathaniel Hackett may have lost his fastball just a bit. They didn't want to fire him. They just wanted maybe add another smart offensive brain, because for Aaron, he is comfortable with Hackett, and they're cool with that. That's fine. But if this defense can play at the level that they're expected to play at with the roster they have, and what Jeff Ulbrich, the defensive coordinator, can do and implement with these guys, and if Aaron can just manage it, they can have success.
So, Dianna, let's talk about a team that's actually had success, the ultimate success, 2 years running here, the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. I was intrigued to see you've got a new podcast, Scoop City, along with Chase Daniel, and I know that some of your opening episodes, I'm assuming, are going to be interviews you've done with various members of the Chiefs. What, in your mind, was the most intriguing conversation you had in the course of that exercise?
First of all, how ridiculous is the name of the podcast, Scoop City? It sounds like an ice cream podcast, right? It's like, what are you talking about? But it came together actually just
I'm okay with that.
It was like as a joke, right? Because like I was just like, yeah, we got to get the scoop on that. We got to get and it's like, that's essentially what I live in a place of scoop all the time. So let's just make it a little city, and we'll invite people to become residents of it. So look, going out, being around the champs, I spent a lot of time with them over the years since I've been covering the league, and I covered the Chiefs pretty much most of my career as they've been winners with Patrick Mahomes. So to see the growth and also to see the consistency there. But I will say I hadn't seen Andy Reid like that ever. When he sat with us, some of it was the comfort with Chase. Chase had been his quarterback for a few years, but also just he's in a good place. He's got Patrick Mahomes, he's got Travis Kelce, he's got Taylor Swift, he's got a new contract, right? So things are good in Kansas City, and they're locked in on the three-peat. And you know, a lot of coaches, I think, would have a problem with their players coming out before camp. Heck, after the game, after the Super Bowl, Travis Kelce said he was going for a three-peat. And at the time, I'm like, what are you talking about? It didn't even register to me. They are so vocal about doing this thing again. And Andy is in full support. He gives this team such a long leash to be who they are because they so-called pay the bills. They pay the rent. They take care of the business that they need to take. So we really sat with him to explore what his role is as a coach now, because he doesn't have to do much of the coaching in terms of the discipline and the preparation and getting on these guys anymore, because you have leadership, right? So this is what winning organizations do. They build a culture, and then you can let go of it because it's just expected. And really the only other organization I've covered in my career, and from what you guys I'm sure have seen through your own eyes, are the Patriots, right? The Patriots are known for having that type of leadership and expectation and a really high standard in the building. So to be around him, I just enjoyed his comfort with just going into conversations about Taylor Swift. I never even asked him. He brought Taylor up about just her influence on the team and how good he is for Travis. So it was great to be around this winning attitude, but also to see that he's 66 years old and he's still so into it. And he has this drive in him that I know I'm inspired by, just to see how even when you're at the top, there's still so much that you can do more of. And he's at that point in his life, he wants to do more.
Well, Dianna, you mentioned paying the bills, and I immediately think of the Dallas Cowboys because they often pay the bills for this league, but also they got a bunch of players who want to cash some checks. And you got CeeDee Lamb, who wants a new deal, and he wasn't at camp for the workouts. And Dak Prescott needs a new deal. Micah Parsons wants to get paid. And you got Mike McCarthy, who was not fired and into the last year of his contract. And it's always Super Bowl or bust, although they never get to the Super Bowl. What kind of situation would you describe Mike McCarthy being in this season for the Dallas Cowboys?
So normally I would share with you the conversations I have in the building with agents, right, to just kind of set the table. But I just got off the phone with Stephen Jones because he was a guest for episode 2 of Scoop City. So I asked them all this because I'm kind of sick of just guessing. What are they doing? And I think everyone is, right? Because I don't understand their philosophy. I don't get how they do business. Why are they waiting to the end? And we dive into that in the episode that drops tomorrow. But I want to talk to you about what you asked right now here and what he had to say about it. And look, we kind of bunched up all the deals, right? You mentioned CD, Dak, Micah, and coach, right? When was the last time we had a starting quarterback and a head coach entering the season on their final deal together? I did research, can't find it. So if someone listening can find me that team, I don't know where they exist and when it was, but it makes it very interesting because nobody wants to go out there playing with just as a lame duck here. So he came across very optimistic that all the deals are going to get done with the players. In terms of Mike, he just kept going back to singing the praises of what Mike has done, but also added a line in there that he understands why people are disappointed that they don't make the playoffs. And until they see it, you can't say the Dallas Cowboys are stars. You just can't, not until they get there. So, look, I think the fact that Mike McCarthy is coaching without a deal right now, it's not good, right? That's not a good sign for him. I talked to a lot of head coaches in the league. I know coaches who are 3 years out freaking out. So I can't imagine what it's like to be sitting here knowing when you're the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. But I do think if they have success, I mean, it'll get moving. But my gut feeling, just talking to Stephen Jones, I think they get all of this done.
I wonder how much Bills fans might be freaking out going into this season. And as you know, we're a Toronto-based show, so a lot of Bills fans would be listening to us. And ESPN comes out with their top 10 quarterbacks ranking, and there's Josh Allen at number 3. But then you get an NFL executive saying that he's overrated. So I'm going to ask you straight up, is Josh Allen overrated?
Heck no. Do you know how many general managers, head coaches, defensive coordinators who have to face him complain to me about Josh Allen? They would do anything to have a Josh Allen type player. His build, his ability, his just everything that comes with him. I'm watching the New York Giants on Hard Knocks right now as you're seeing Brian Daboll trying to navigate this situation where he has a quarterback that I think he can make better and can improve. Is coming off injury. But you can't help but think Brian Daboll had Josh Allen, like what he would give to have that again. So while I think that executive who said he's overrated, maybe just hanging his hat or at least using the evidence of the Bills not being able to get over the hump, the Buffalo Bills problem is not Josh Allen. That ain't it. So I think that's just someone just buying into looking at how far a team goes. But Josh Allen is going to have the ability to do it. We're going to see Josh Allen in his career in a Super Bowl. It's going to happen.
Well, and you know what? That kind of begs the question. Like Josh Allen, there's a lot that is on his shoulders when it comes to trying to generate offense for that team. Like he has to run the ball because for years the run game hasn't been great for the Bills. Now you take away Stephon Diggs. Who's he throwing the ball to? And is he still going to have to run it himself? Like how much can this guy do by himself?
And I think that's why this Bills team is not going to be as good as we've seen in years past. I think they're going through a little bit of this evolution of change because they had to, because of the finances as part of it. But they needed to grow out of whatever that was the last few years. Not saying it was bad, but in order for them to take the next step, I know leadership there felt that the moves that they made in this offseason were the best thing for them for the future. So I do think when you ask about the load that Josh Allen is going to have to carry, I believe this is the season that he's going to have to be asked to carry the most because of all this. So look, he wants to do it. He can handle it. And I know their head coach believes in that he can handle it. So, we'll see how it fares. But this is not a Bills team that I'm talking to you guys about or writing about going, I could see them in the Super Bowl like I have in years past. I'm just a little hesitant for this season.
Dan, I'm intrigued by the wide receiver trade market, or what could be the wide receiver trade market when you look at Brandon Ayuk, you look at Devontae Adams on the Netflix series. We're seeing him complaining about getting hit too much in Vegas. We've heard the rumors about him possibly landing back with Aaron Rodgers in New York. Frankie brings up the fact that the Bills may be in the market for someone to catch Josh Allen's passes. How do you see it shaking out? All these diva wide receivers that want out of town, do you see them moving or do you see them staying?
I love the drama right now because it just reminds me of like relationships, like the ones that we have like with people. I'm going to unfollow you and I'm going to like the other guy's photos. You know what I mean? Just like it's just so immature. But this is what you do, and we see it work. Like I've had people that are part of organizations in outside Ayuk and Devontae Adams, who's not doing any of that right now, but he is talking a little bit about it. So that tells you something, right? There's something going on if he's expressing that he would love to play with Aaron Rodgers again. But you see in Ayuk like in Steelers pictures and Washington Commanders photos and watching film. Like it's so great. But I've had examples in the past where players did that when they were holding out, and the team wants to take the temperature of the player because they're not really communicating that well. It's like, how serious is this? And my favorite is when they clear the deck, right? So they get rid of all their team stuff, like a hard breakup, like a warning. And then the day they sign the contract, it all pops right back up. It's like, yep, we worked it all out. We're back in love. It's all good. So in terms of Brandon Ayuk, look, the 49ers really want to keep him. They're not getting the price that they want in terms of other teams that are lurking and are interested. There were teams interested right around the draft. They weren't going to get the price. They weren't going to make that trade happen. Look, the Niners are in the driver's seat from my perspective in terms of the leverage on the deal. They were willing to pay him $27 million is on the table. Around that, Ayuk wants more. Well, guess what? He has to play on this last year, and next year they can use the franchise tag on him. So he's in a tough spot, which is why he's playing these games. This is why he's doing it, because he's trying to say, like, I'm not happy, make me happy. And look, maybe it works. Look at San Francisco's history. They did it with Debo. They did it with Robbie Gould. We've seen them do this where they wait to the end of the summer. Look at Nick Bosa last year. But I remember talking to Bosa's family right before he signed the deal. They were freaking out. Meanwhile, in the back of my head, I'm like, what are you freaking out about? You have a freak of nature as a son. Like, you're fine. He's got to get paid. Yeah. Right? He's got to, and of course he got paid. But that was a really interesting process, talking to the mom of a player waiting for a huge deal. That it was so cool to just hear just that true mom emotion. So either way, we will see. I think the San Francisco 49ers are going to figure out a way to make this work with Brandon Ayuk.
Dianna Russini, senior NFL insider for The Athletic, and also the host of a new NFL podcast, Scoop City, joining us on Overdrive. And want to get your thoughts on those hype teams. The teams that either they ended last season on a high note or they had this really good offseason and everyone's kind of buying into their stock. Who are you believing in that can actually translate on the field this season and can really make that jump and maybe do some damage in the playoffs?
Philadelphia Eagles fell off a cliff last year. They won those 10 games, and it wasn't an easy 10 games for them. And when you talk to people in that building, it wasn't some winning way where they just thought they were going to go all the way to the Super Bowl with no issue. So they made changes, though, and they made good changes, right? Offensive coordinator, now you have Kellen Moore. Nick Sirianni no longer calling everything. He's going to be involved, but this is a Kellen Moore offense. The addition of Saquon Barkley, Nick Sirianni is a really conservative play caller in general, as he's going to observe this process. So to have a really strong run game, this is a team that, they want to run first in the red zone. They're not passing. They're not throwing the ball. So to have a player like Saquon Barkley, obviously behind this very stout offensive line, despite the fact that they're not, they lost Jason Kelce. They'll be fine. They've got a great offensive line coach in Stoutland. But look, I think Vic Fangio brings a ripple. Vic is very comfortable with who Vic is and what he wants, and he is going to shape up that defense that needs some help. But I think if they can just get the most out of Jalen, give him a little bit of deep throws so he's happy, do the things that he wants to do on offense, and mix it with some of that conservative play calling and the ground game, they could be so good. They've got A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. Like, let's not forget how this is a roster built to win. They just need to bring it together and sort of get through some of that conflict that they had last year. And I think this is the season where they can do it. They definitely can do it.
Well, Dianna, very few cover this league as well as you. We appreciate you joining us on Overdrive, and best of luck with the new podcast.
Thank you so much. I don't know about that, but about my coverage, but I appreciate coming on. I like talking to you guys. You guys know your stuff really well, and you have really annoying questions because you ask good questions. But I appreciate it. So hopefully your listeners can check out Scoop City's episode 2 drops tomorrow. Anywhere you get your podcast, you can check it out.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, Dianna. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
There you have it. Dianna Russini joining us on Overdrive, the home of annoying questions.
That's it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Look at us. Some reporters, some journalists, and very investigative, all three of us.
We annoyed her, Frankie. How do you like that?
In a good way, though.
I guess. I'm not sure we should take it that way, but she said it was in a good way.
Yeah.
I think FanDuel had Death Row asking his first question about the Cowboys at minus 10,000.
Oh, God, yeah.
And sure enough, it hit.
You weren't going to make any money off of that bet.
Yeah, really.
No, as soon as I saw, so we have our little group text, and I saw the thumbs up, and it's Mark Rowe, and I'm like, here we go. Okay. It's Cowboys time.
But in fairness, it's not like I'm asking about the Commanders.
No.
Right?
Is that a team? Is that a team polo there? Is there a Cowboys star on the side there?
It's a team one.
Okay. It's TSN. I wasn't sure if there's a little silver in the collar there.
I actually think there's so many Cowboys fans at TSN that there's a Cowboys star on like the back, but it's on the inside just to hide it. Just to hide it from everyone.
Maybe.
That's right.
Yeah. Maybe.
It's you, it's LeBron, it's CJ. Who else is it?
Laura Dykin.
Laura.
Tessa Bonhomme.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's an all-star team of Lone Star fans.
Yeah, and I never said that they're a great team, but they certainly are an interesting team, or at least a team that that provides a lot of oxygen for this league.
And,
it's like we said earlier in the week. It's like the Maple Leafs. They had a very similar situation, disappointing playoff exit, and they didn't make the changes that all their fans wanted them to make.
And their news leads ESPN. And Leafs news leads TSN, and right or wrong, it takes up a lot of oxygen with those two teams, and we'll see what the Cowboys can do. There's a lot of big decisions on the horizon for that team.
The biggest difference between the Cowboys and the Maple Leafs, as a child, I got to watch them win 3 Super Bowls.
That's exactly it. Like when I've heard people compare the Maple Leafs and the Cowboys, all my Cowboys friends text me and say, hey, by the way, we won in the 90s, man.
We had a dynasty. If only Jimmy Johnson stuck around. But anyways, we don't need to go down that road. But we do want to go down the basketball road. Mike Vorkanoff from The Athletic is going to join us. We'll get his thoughts on, he's traded again, Russell Westbrook, through the Utah Jazz and circling back to the Denver Nuggets. Bronny James having a good game in Summer League. This is where we're at this point. We're evaluating Summer League games with Bronny James. Caitlin Clark, and also Jonte Porter. He wrote an article on the demise of Jonte Porter and what happened with him this past year with the Raptors. So that's all coming up. Overdrive continuing, TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. Overdrive continuing. Mark Rowan for Brian Hayes alongside Dave Feschuk and Frankie Corrado. And Russell Westbrook is it official that I guess he's not official that he's a member of the Denver Nuggets?
Not yet.
It's implied that he's been traded. Well, he has been traded to the Utah Jazz and then will be bought out and go to the Denver Nuggets, which happened a year and a half ago, right? Where the Lakers traded him to Utah and then he, spent a day, an afternoon as a Utah Jazz.
Exactly.
What's his game like? Like, how much does he have left in the tank? Because it wasn't pretty for him the way it finished in LA. Now, if he goes to Denver, he's going to a good team. What's his role there, and how much can he actually contribute in that situation?
Yeah, it's to me, it speaks to the desperation of the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah,
right?
What did they want out of him?
Yeah, well, they're in desperate need of depth, right? And it's just, as we're finding out in this second apron era of the new collective bargaining agreement in the NBA, it's just tough for teams to fill out their roster with depth because everything's priced out of your price range because you just can't spend money. And it's essentially this is the closest the NBA has ever come to having a hard cap. You can still exceed the salary cap to sign your own players, and there's still some exceptions, unlike in the NHL, which is a true hard cap outside of the Robida Island exception. But yeah, this is really tough times for NBA team builders, and I think it speaks to the desperation of Denver. They need depth, and they've kind of gone to Russell Westbrook, despite the fact, as Frankie points out, there's not a lot left there.
Well, our next guest will have some thoughts on that because he covers the NBA for The Athletic. Mike Vorkanoff joining us on Overdrive. Mike, thanks for coming on. And I don't know how much you heard, but we were kind of reacting to the Russell Westbrook trade and how he's once again a Utah Jazz for a few hours, and eventually he'll go to the Denver Nuggets. But how do you see this trade working out for both the team and the player?
Well, I think this gives him a credible case to go into the Hall of Fame as a Utah Jazz member, which is probably big for how he'll be remembered.
He better mention them in the speech.
Yeah, 2 times. Two times with the franchise. I don't know. I don't think it really moves the needle all that much. I think the depth that Denver needed was more so on the wing after losing Davies Caldwell-Pope. And I don't think that this really does much to help with that. And obviously, if you're thinking down the line to the playoffs, I don't know if Russell Westbrook will even be on the floor in kind of the crunch time closing minutes for Denver because of the position he plays and how he plays and how that would, interact with Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, which is their bread and butter.
So 6 years ago today, the Toronto Raptors make a big trade and they bring in Kawhi Leonard. That leads to a championship for the team. And now, we're basically 5 years removed from that. If you think back to that time, where the Raptors were at, who they had on their team, did you kind of expect the Raptors to be where they are now 5 years later? Like everyone talks about that, 5-year plan, 5-year outlook. Is this what you kind of had pegged for the Raptors where they are now?
I truly don't know, mainly because I think it's kind of, maybe this just is my cynical view of the world, but I think it's kind of foolhardy now to think 5 years down the line for any NBA team, just how short the contracts are, how much player movement there is, how much team movement there is, although we'll see if that continues to be the case under the second apron. But I'm sure that, the summer of 2019, they had different plans in the Raptors organization for what they would look now. But I just think it's so hard to look that far out because of all the variables, and especially when you had the players involved like they did in the Kawhi Leonard trade at that time and how that impacted things.
Mike, it's always good to get people's perspective on a franchise when they're outside the market. We live this team, this Masai Ujiri-created team every day during the season. What's your perception of the way Masai Ujiri has gone about sort of the next chapter of the post-championship Raptors era, building around Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel Quickley, R.J. Barrett, and a handful of young prospects that the Raptors have in camp? What do you see there?
I think it's starting to make sense now. I think it was a little bit confusing for the past few years, if only because they seem to be neither here nor there, right? As they also were losing core players during that period of time, and sometimes for nothing, as they did with Fred VanVleet leaving in free agency. Obviously, Kawhi Leonard left, although it doesn't seem like they could have done much to mitigate that, right? But I think now there's a vision there. They're building around interesting young players. Maybe they'll be able to add through the draft, potentially high-end picks. We'll see where that all ends up. But I think that, building around Quickley, building around Barnes, now there's some vision there on how this goes. I think the OG trade was ultimately a good one for them because of who it netted back. Obviously, R.J. Barrett is there. I think now you see where this is going, and you just hope to have some, if you're them, you just hope to have some draft luck, and maybe that kind of puts things into to fast forward real quick there, and you come along quicker than you assume.
Mike Vorkunov, national NBA reporter for The Athletic, joining us on Overdrive. You recently wrote about Jonte Porter, the former Raptor, who, of course, has been banned from the NBA. And was he optimistic that a judge was going to allow him to play in Greece? Obviously, that was denied, but it kind of took everyone by surprise that was his next step, given everything that's happened.
Yeah, I was surprised too. I don't know what optimism or not, but it was shot down pretty quickly by the federal judge who, is obviously administering his case there. I think she replied in something like 5 or 6 hours with a very succinct no. Maybe there was a chance because it seemed like the U.S. District Attorney's Office, where he was prosecuted, was not fighting it and seemed okay with letting him go overseas to play. And, it was a little surprising because, again, he pled guilty to a federal charge, and he had sentencing coming up as of now scheduled for December. And this was him asking to leave the country, which would have been in direct, would have been led to a direct change of his bond conditions, which took his passport away. I was a little surprised to see it happen, but it was shot down pretty fast.
Yeah.
I don't know how fast these things go on average, but 5 to 6 hours seems pretty fast.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Mike, the real story of the moment in the NBA is about a big media rights deal. We're hearing $76 billion for the league, and it's a bunch of different partners, but we understand it's not quite done. There's an opportunity here apparently for Warner Brothers to match what Amazon is offering. What do you make of this 11th hour negotiation after the deal's been approved by the Board of Governors? Have you seen anything go down like this in the past, and what do you make of the way the NBA is running this media rights negotiation?
Well, now the fun part starts. The 76 billion wasn't fun enough, I guess. So obviously Warner Brothers Discovery, which owns TNT, had an opportunity to lock down the NBA rights. They had an exclusive negotiating window, just like Disney, which owns ESPN and ABC, did back in April. That expired back in April. They decided not to. NBA hit the market and agreed to deals with NBC and Amazon along with Disney. And now Warner Brothers Discovery is trying to potentially claim what they have as matching rights, and they'll try to match one of the packages, probably the Amazon package, and see if that works. I don't know if it'll work. I don't know if they'll definitely do it either. The 5-day window started Wednesday, I believe, when they received the contracts. So we're right in the middle of that. I don't think the NBA really knows how it's going to go. It's an interesting attempt by Warner Bros. Discovery, too, because let's say it works and you get the rights, then you're partners for the next 11 years, and you're almost doing it at gunpoint for the NBA, right? And I don't know if that's a good way to start or continue a partnership and be together for 11 years. And it's really holding the whole thing up because the NBA thinks it has a deal, and the Warner Bros. Discovery is taking its time to see if they'll fight it.
Well, Mike, the WNBA is on the verge of a lucrative TV deal, and a lot of that is coming with the popularity of Caitlin Clark. And last night, she broke the league's record for assists in a game with 19. We were talking about it before. We're obviously all disappointed that we won't see her at the Olympics. But what's been the impression that you've had with her and the impact that she's had on the league so early on in her rookie season?
It's been tremendous. Like, I don't even know the right adjective to use to describe it. I guess the best way I can explain it is this year there have been 16 now games that have averaged more than 1 million viewers, which that's more than the WNBA Finals averaged last year. And so there have been 16 games this year, and I think 14 of those have involved the Fever. The top two have been Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark, Fever versus Sky. So, this is something that's catapulted the league into a new stratosphere for them as a media property. Obviously, the popularity is clear and how much it's growing, and now they have kind of like a bedrock star, even with Caitlin Clark just still being a rookie. And I think league's dream for someone like that who can change kind of everything for them right away.
We were talking about this earlier in the show when it comes to Caitlin Clark and her kind of omission from the American women's basketball team at the Olympics, and understanding that she's young and she's a rookie and all that kind of stuff. But every time there's a WNBA headline in a positive way or highlight, it's Caitlin Clark leading the charge. Maybe just help us understand why she would be on that team.
Why she would be on the team?
Wouldn't.
Oh, wouldn't. You can still argue she's not one of the 12 best Americans, right? I think there is some level of seniority that comes with these things, and just being involved with Team USA in years past. I think maybe there's an argument to be had that maybe she could use a 2-week break for her own body, considering she went straight from the college season right into the WNBA season, since they are right on top of one another. I think just a month apart or a month and a half apart. So that's a large workload. I totally get the business angle of it. And, maybe even to some degree, scarcity can kind of help from a marketing standpoint, too, just if you're not able to see her all the time everywhere, and maybe makes watching her in the W a little bit more special, I guess, than if you can't see her play for Team USA during that window, too.
Well, we will get to see her this weekend at the All-Star game as the All-Stars play that American Olympic team that she was not able to make this time around, but I'm guessing we'll probably see her in 4 years in Los Angeles. Mike, we appreciate you joining us on Overdrive. All the best.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me defend the Caitlin Clark not being on Team USA. That was a hard one.
Yeah, okay. There's Mike Forkinoff from The Athletic, and making the case why she was omitted from the team.
I'm assuming Mike doesn't believe that. I think what he said was you can make the case she's not among the best 12 Americans. It's not a very good case, okay?
No.
That is their case. Yeah, obviously.
Well, clearly it's their case. The old guard, made a very loud statement that they didn't want this young upstart among their ranks just yet. But now that Caitlin Clark's come out there and said, I'm not just one of the best. I am the best passer in this league right now. I'm probably going to be, if not the best, one of the best shooters, along with Sabrina Ionescu and whoever else is in that category. Probably those two will be the best two shooters in this league in very short order. And she's going to be the best all-around player once she, grows into the body, gets a little stronger. She's getting pushed around a little bit right now. I would assume she's got the work ethic and the drive to get into the weight room and become a much better athlete over the next handful of years. But right now, today, Frankie, there's no doubt in my mind that she'd be the starting point guard of this team.
Well,
she's the best ball distributor they've got.
And Hayes always talks about like the business aspect of things. Like the WNBA has picked up quite a bit of steam here, and a lot of that has to do with Caitlin Clark and what she's doing and kind of the highlights that she elicits and on ESPN, and that's a very big platform. And you can't have too many external influences when it comes to making a team like this, but let's call a spade a spade. Like, there are external influences. And I have a hard time thinking, like, from a business point of view, how you don't want your budding, emerging superstar that you can market really well playing at the Olympics with that Team USA apparel and everything that comes with that, and all the eyes that are going to see her there. Like, it would only do good things for the WNBA that's continuing to try and grow their audience and grow their game.
Yeah, and again, we started the conversation with Caitlin Clark, with Mike, with a new TV deal that is, I don't know the percentage, how much bigger it is, but it's a $2.2 billion deal. I believe it's $200 million per season. I believe right now they're making something like $50 million a season. And many people in the league are questioning whether that's too small. Yeah, like the NBA is apportioning this to the WNBA. And I know the head of the NBA the WNBA Players Association has made the case that $200 million is selling them short. Because as Mike points out, you look at the ratings. Yeah, she's outdrawing the finals from last year.
Like, this is like a Taylor Swift type effect. Like, she transcends the sport. She transcends basketball. She's just an incredibly popular person, let alone basketball player. And that, I think that is going to be obviously very lucrative for her, but very lucrative for the WNBA, and maybe not. And the NBA maybe needs to make it a little more lucrative for the WNBA in some eyes.
And while not as close to her equal, the rivalry with Angel Reese is also good for the league as well. And you can't help but bring it back to Magic versus Bird and how big that was for the NBA. And you can pick holes and the differences, but when you have that and you're looking at your league and you're saying, we could have this for the next 15 years, like, that's huge, because those are two names that the masses know, not just basketball fans.
Exactly. And you know what? When the masses know those names, sometimes it doesn't even matter what they're doing on the court. Yes, like you want to see the success and the battles and all that kind of stuff, but when it's a household name, people just want to know that there's a rivalry and there's highlights of it, and you almost take one side or the other when it comes to those things, and that keeps people engaged, and they have the opportunity to bottle that up, and we'll kind of see what comes of it.
Well, the WNBA All-Star Game goes this weekend in Phoenix, and again, Caitlin Clark will be on that All-Star team with Angel Reese. They will play the Olympic team before they go to Paris, and then the league is down for a month, and Caitlin Clark, I guess, can use that time to take a breath because it's been a busy year for her playing for Iowa and now Indiana as the Fever have turned around their season. When we return, we'll wrap up the show. We've got our best bets as Overdrive continues on TSN 1050 and up on TSN 2. Overdrive continuing. Mark Rowe, Dave Feschuk, Frankie Corrado. Today's best bets are powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. We're going straight to Summer League. The LA Lakers plus 5.5 points. We're taking the over of 178.5 points. Today's best bets are powered by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today and find thousands of ways to play. Please play responsibly. 19 plus and physically located in Ontario. Frankie, you got a big evening coming up.
Yeah, big night. There's a few steaks waiting to get cooked. It's the 4th wedding anniversary for us. So
congratulations, buddy.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys. It was a fun show. Nice to hang
That's
out
right,
with you guys.
because you officially got married in 2020, but you didn't have your ceremony until 2022?
Yeah, so we did. Yeah, we got married in 2020, and then we were pretty restricted with what we could do. We honestly probably would have just foregone everything, but we had all these deposits in to a bunch of different things, like the florist and the music.
I know
the hall.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, like we got to do this thing, and we got engaged in 2018. So it was quite a while, but we finally were able to have our big party, and it worked out great because everything had opened up. It was basically like the first time everyone was back out and about. So everyone had a great time, and we're 4 years in now, and we got twins that are 4 months old, so we're grinding away.
Awesome stuff.
All right.
Great work this week, Frankie. Dave, you and I are back tomorrow, I believe, right?
Looking forward to it.
Well, I think we're going to have a bit of an Olympic theme during tomorrow's show.
Can't wait.
Looking forward to that. We'll be back tomorrow at 4 p.m., and we'll chat then.